Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We're going on here just probably 30 seconds or so. And as we're waiting before we start our webinar, I just wanted to share for anybody that's on here early, share some interesting new small business economic trends that just came out from the National Federation of Independent Business, who has a report that's been running since 1973 called Small Business Economic Trends. If you're interested in it, you can certainly just Google NFIB Small Business Economic Trends and download it. But really interesting report. I always look at it every single month, and the January report is out now. And it looks good for small business. Small business optimism continues to be up. We're at some of the highest levels in the index that we've had in the 45-year history that they've been doing it. Job creation was solid. The report talks about, with most small business sector owners reporting a seasonally adjusted average employment change of 0.23 workers per firm. At the same time, people are having trouble, it looks like, finding qualified workers. Other stats real quick for you. Capital spending continues to be up, so people are investing in vehicles, spending on new equipment. 16% improved or expanded some of their facilities. Sales and inventory are up, which is a good number to watch. People are raising prices. Average price was up 3 points. And the credit markets look solid too. So overall, really good report for small business. So for those of you that just joined us, good morning. This is Tom ULBRICH from the University of Buffalo Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership with the Taking Care of Business webinar. This is our second webinar. And we want to welcome you this morning. I want to make sure that I thank our sponsors, the Bonadeo Group and Unolan, who make this possible. So thank you both for that. And again, I always like to tell people we are celebrating our 30th anniversary here at CEL. 1,400 grads, 2.2 billion in activity out in the local Western economy, representing over 22,000 employees. So we're really proud of our alumni, and we are celebrating that this year. So let's jump right into today's seminar about why businesses don't scale. And we're going to go back to a slide I shared with you last time. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but I just want to remind everybody that there's 28.8 million small businesses in the U.S. A figure I didn't give you. Nearly 20 million of those don't have employees, so that would be people that are self-employed. But of the employer firms, the one number to remember is 99.7% of all businesses in the U.S. have fewer than 500 employees, and 96% of U.S. businesses gross more than $1 million annually. So, in looking at that and looking from our experience, I want to share with you why we find that businesses don't scale. So first, let's start by saying, what does it mean to scale? And I want to see there's lots of definitions. And often when we talk about scaling a business, we're talking about a tech startup with outside investors that are growing rapidly and scaling, almost exponential type of growth. What I want to share with you today, though, for the sake of this discussion, let's define scale for today as any company that's growing at a rate with sufficient profits that allows the business to be more than just a job for its owner. So another way to look at it would be having the ability to build a business that doesn't rely on a single person to make every business survive, or think about a business that has the people and processes in place that removes that reliance on the owner and founder. So there's lots and lots of reasons why businesses don't scale and thrive. But today I want to just focus on a few of the more universal reasons that we see. So I'm going to share 7 with you, and won't go into great detail, but I'll share them up front, and then we can look at it together. But we've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs here, and there's really a few root causes, and we have 7 of them that we want to share with you. And I want you to think about, as I go through this list, your own experience with business, and are you dealing with any of these challenges yourself today, or have you faced them before in your business? So one is that you've believed in the self-employment myth. And again, I'll go through these quickly, then we'll dig into each one a little bit more depth. 2 is you just can't let go. You're for lack of a better way to say it, you're a control freak and you won't let go of anything. 3, you have no idea where you're going. So you get up every day, run your business, but you really don't have a plan for the future and where you're headed. The fourth, you don't have the right people. So perhaps you've built a business, but you just haven't taken the time to surround yourself with the right people to be able to scale the business successfully. Fifth one that we see a ton is that you have no systems in place. So there's nothing repeatable in place that people can follow. Sometimes we talk about, I hate to say this to small business owners, but the concept of McDonaldizing your business a little bit, putting processes into place that are repeatable, that people know what to do consistently. Six, another big one that I think many of us as small businesses are guilty of, is we don't hold people accountable. And seven, and maybe the most important in today's society, is we fail to innovate as a business. So let's dig into each of these. I'll try not to spend too much time. I know everybody's time is valuable, and we like to give you a little bit of information here at the start of the day without taking up your whole morning. So let's dig in a little bit first with you believed the self-employment myth. So another way to say this, and this comes from Michael Gerber with the E-Myth, which many of you have read. If you haven't, I would highly recommend you read this book. So the question really is, do you have a job or do you have a business? So are you creating a true business, or do you have this self-employment charade going on that you call a business? So Michael Gerber goes on to say, if your business depends on you, you don't own a business, you have a job. And it's the worst job in the world because you're working for a lunatic. You can't close it when you want to, because if you leave, there's nobody there to do the work. And you can't sell it when you want to, because who wants to buy a job? So really, really think about this, because I think a lot of people start a business, if you read the E-Myth, from the point of being a technician, where you're really good at something and you're passionate about some type of activity that you may be good at. You start a business, but you've never really built a business. So this is a self-employment myth. And I also want to stop here for a second and just drop in a couple comments of lifestyle versus growth businesses. And, you know, I want to remind everybody, there's definitely a difference between a lifestyle business and a rapidly driven enterprise business, like a tech startup, a life science company. And some people, without a full understanding of what a good lifestyle business looks like, speaks poorly of them. They hear the word lifestyle and they speak poorly of a lifestyle business. Most of us, or many of us, are lifestyle businesses. I don't believe that. Many of you that know me, I'm a huge proponent of a high functioning lifestyle business as a business option or choice for you as an entrepreneur. But the key here is a high functioning lifestyle business. So what do we mean by that? Lifestyle businesses, they can be great or not so much. So if you think about a great lifestyle business, really what it's doing is doing just what it says, supporting a lifestyle you want. That lifestyle could be a certain amount of income. It could be the freedom you have of owning your own business. It could be the amount of hours you want to work, many things like that. The flip side of that is a poor lifestyle business is one that just consumes you and owns you, that you can never leave, and is sucking you dry 24/7. On the other hand, high potential growth businesses are typically high risk with a potential to pay out a large reward at the end. So think of our tech companies, companies like Google and Apple and many of the startups that are starting here at the Innovation Center in Buffalo, New York. There's outside investment needed typically for these companies to scale. The reward can be great, but the risk is also quite great. And there's a very high failure rate with this type of business. And really quickly, you know, what's the difference when you look at a lifestyle business or a small, medium enterprise, as the government describes it, or an innovation-driven business? And there are really just a few points, I think, that makes this clear to people. One, lifestyle businesses are typically focused local and regional only, where an innovation-driven business can be regional to global. So meaning focused local, you can't move food location, you can't easily move a doctor's office, those type of businesses. Innovation isn't necessary in a lifestyle business, although I highly recommend you be thinking about it. But innovation-driven businesses are almost always built on innovation. Lifestyle businesses, non-tradable jobs, meaning the jobs can't leave the community, which is one thing I love about them. So we're employing people in the community. Innovation-driven businesses, often people can be employed or the jobs can leave the community. Little to no external capital, and a linear type of growth, meaning with a lifestyle business, you put money in, you can grow the business at a linear rate. You're not going to get this exponential scaling growth that you might see with an innovation-driven business. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both, and I'd like to say ultimately the choice is yours as a business owner. Just don't confuse the two, and certainly don't confuse the self-employment myth with what it means to have a great lifestyle business. So the second area that I want to touch base on with you, why businesses don't scale or grow, is this concept of you can't let go. So many small business owners, we work with this feeling of being overwhelmed. And I want you to think this morning about why is that? What creates that feeling? And I know the easy answer is, well, there's just so much to do and there's only so many hours in a day. So this is how I feel like a lot of small businesses are one mistake away from disaster. This is how many of them often feel that have a business that doesn't have a lot of structure in it and really relies on them. They're barely holding things together and maybe just one small mistake away from disaster. So again, why is that? Have you ever really stopped to think about where the real problem stems from? And sometimes we work with business owners that want to start with what I'm going to call the blame game and use every excuse possible for their lack of success. I jokingly refer to it as the woe is me tour bus. And that's the bus that's super hard to get off of. That's the one where you think that nobody experiences the challenges that you do. Your industry is different. I can go on and on and on. This is an area where we have to get a little bit tough with people and be honest with ourselves and really say, perhaps a lot of it is right here, and we need to look in the mirror, and maybe we don't let go, and this is part of the problem. So I think most of us really need to take a look in the mirror. If we're honest, the source of our angst is often looking right back at us as a small business owner. And why is that? I really think it's because many an entrepreneur or small business owner is reactive and constantly in firefighting mode. So we're often driven by tasks with this immediate need for action. And we don't have processes, we don't communicate well, and we believe that no one can do the job like we can do it ourselves. So think of, I like to think about this as, I think this picture is a good illustration. We're often moving at 100 plus miles an hour and redlining both our companies and our employees. So this may sound familiar to some of you, hopefully not too many of you, but if it is, take a really good look in the mirror. But what happens when we're running a business like this? A couple things happen. One of two things I see a lot. One is that we're running at a speed that usually means we manage our business by either barking orders at everybody, being super reactive and just shouting out orders, or one that I find more typical and more interesting, and that is that we have this total inability to delegate and expect everybody around us to absorb what it is that we expect them to do through some type of osmosis. We really believe that if we focus super hard, people will magically absorb what they need to know and know what to do. So for today's webinar, I think it's really important that the evaluation of any inability to build a business, that we take a really good look in the mirror, and that we must understand that accepting much of the problem, we need to accept ourselves in it, and it's really looking right back at us. People don't like to have orders barked at them, and trust me, I've tried this myself over the years. People do not learn well through us walking around just thinking about what we need them to do or what a good team member looks like. The third area is you have no idea where you're going. So this little quote here, as a Cheshire cat once told Alice, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. The challenge in business is that concept of taking any road may be very costly to you, as we want to have the right road leading us to our destination in the most efficient and profitable way possible. Detours can cost us both time and or money. In some cases, it can be really fatal to our business. So how do you take care of that? How do you know where you're going? So having a plan is really critical. And I want to say strategy counts. We talk a lot about strategic planning and strategy in our program, but I think many people have a bad taste in their mouth when it comes to strategic planning. And what I want to say is you need a plan, but a great strategic plan doesn't need to be complicated, but it does need to be thoughtful. You need to build into your areas of competitive advantage. We really like to talk about having a living, breathing document, and ultimately we want it to become part of your culture. So a great resource for this is Gazelle's International Coaches, and there's a great book if you just want to learn on your own called Vern Harnish's Scaling Up, or Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, where he outlines the process of building this living, breathing one-page plan. I'm going to delve into this much deeper in another webinar, but let me just leave you with an example in this area today that many of you that may have interaction with our center have heard me talk about before. But remember about keeping it simple. So if you don't have a clear strategy that you can communicate in 35 words or less, you don't really know where you're going, and it's hard for other people to understand that. If you don't know where you're going, how can you expect your team to know where you're going? So again, it doesn't have to be lengthy, it doesn't have to be complicated, and simplicity will always win. So take, for example, Southwest Air, who we have pictured here, and their strategy, and of course strategy is always changing, but their strategy of wheels up. And when you think about it, wheels up is when they're making money, when the wheels are up on their aircraft. To that end, they built systems and processes from the way passengers are loaded on airplanes, to the types of aircraft they fly, to the routes that they fly, to the culture of fun that's exemplified to support what they need in their strategic plan. So let me leave this section by just saying, hey, do you have a strategic plan? And if not, you really, really need to think about one. The fourth one is you don't have the right people. So if you want to go fast, you can go alone. If you want to go further, you need a team and go together. And this perhaps is one of the greatest challenges in many of the businesses we work with, not having the right team. And often that starts with the inability to recognize that the people that got us here may not all be the people that can get us to the next level. We're often loyal to employees that were with us from the very beginning, or maybe are even family and friends. And I'm not suggesting you toss your team, but I am suggesting that as a company grows, that and needs to have more professional management practices instilled in it, that often we need to bring in a select group of people to have the right people there to help us. So what I'm also saying is no one should be promoted to COO or any other leadership role solely based on tenure or because of personal relationship. And again, it's often necessary to find some new leaders with broader experience and skills to help us grow to the next level. So again, a lot of times we see in small businesses this blind loyalty to early team members, and it can be a huge problem. Again, I'm not suggesting you toss everybody on your team at all, but this is one of the hardest areas in business, is letting go or repositioning some of the people that might have been there in the very beginning with us to take things to the next level. So a way to think about this is really from Jim Collins' work. You know Jim Collins from Good to Great and other research he's done. But he talks about the right people, the right seats, doing the right things right. So often we represent this by our business being a bus and saying, what are the right seats on the bus? And then do we have the right people in those seats? And if we do have the right people, are they doing the right things? Another way to examine this that I think is really, really useful is a functional org chart. And I would love everybody to think about creating a functional org chart for their organization, where we create the functions in the chart that we need to run our business, and we leave people's names out of it. By doing that, it really lets us think about what are the functions we need to operate our business profitably today and wherever we're going in the future, without trying to plug people in the boxes and make people fit where perhaps they don't belong. After you've created a functional org chart, of course you can go back in and plug your people in and say where they fit. But it's a great way for you to identify holes in your organization and gaps. And when it comes to the people piece of business, I'd say another thing that many of us fail to do is think about what does the future hold. And I love this concept of building a virtual bench. So we should always be thinking about what talent do we need, who's out there, are we building relationships so when we do have an opening that people are really waiting to come to work for us. So think about a virtual bench as something that could be really, really important to deal with too. The fifth one, which is a really, really difficult one for many small business owners. But I got to ask you, how do you expect a business to operate without you if you've got no documented processes or systems in place? So you can think of something as simple as checklists, which really aren't that simple, the thought process that goes into them. But this lack of process is a massive point of failure as a business tries to move beyond the control of that lead entrepreneur and founder. So if you're not scaling, you might look first at processes and controls. You've got to have policies, processes, procedures that allow quality and replication of those functions that we do over and over again. So you don't need to answer every question or be involved in every decision. You can train easier, people know what to do without you looking over their shoulder. So think of a company like Subway and process. If you ever look behind the counter when you're perhaps getting a sub, you'll see that they've process mapped everything, including through pictures at the counter there, including how deep the hinge needs to be on the roll, how deep you cut it with a knife in order to be able to properly fold a sandwich. So what are we doing? They don't need to be complicated. You need to discover them. They can be captured and they can continually be defined. And I'll say one great way to develop processes and procedures is to let the people in the field that are doing the work do the first run at them for you. Ask them to capture what they do every day as a starting point to help you build out these. And ultimately, I think a great way to do some of this is to build them in checklists. So if you think about aircraft, airplane pilots, surgeries, a lot of very complicated businesses actually run off a checklist. These are great examples of these processes and procedures. And also the checklist now becomes a form of accountability where people are signing off and saying, I did it. So you don't think for a second that an airline pilot doesn't know how to fly the plane after doing it for thousands of hours, but they don't let themselves get lazy, or the industry doesn't let themselves get lazy by missing something that could be fatal. So although this is surely repetitious, there's a checklist that's gone through all the time in order to make sure that we're not missing something and that process and procedures are being followed. So number 6, you hold nobody accountable. Enough said. All the procedures, the processes in the world, they're really quite useless if you don't hold people accountable. And here's the interesting thing. The buck here, probably in a smaller business, needs to first start with you. And I can tell you from experience and working with a lot of people and my own personal experience, we as human beings are not really great at holding people accountable. We don't like to do it. We don't like to have critical conversations. We don't like confrontation. So once again, though, it can't be through the process of osmosis that people learn about what's expected. If you want to be a good leader and you want to grow a business that doesn't rely on you, it's your responsibility to set clear expectations, not only setting them, but then you have to communicate them clearly. Oftenly, it requires constant coaching, but ultimately, you have to hold people accountable for their actions. We don't like to do that again. I know many of us don't like confrontation. It doesn't have to be confrontation if you embrace a culture of continuously coaching people. But I want to challenge you with this. How in the world can we even think about getting angry with a team member when we don't have a clear description of what's expected of them? We haven't shared it. We never coach them. And I can go on and on and on. That's just not fair to our employees or our team members. And in my experience, it happens way, way too often. So as we wrap things up here, I just want to say number 7 is really, really important in today's world. And as small business owners, we often ignore this, but one of the other reasons that we fail to scale is we fail to innovate. So innovation is anything but business as usual. And, you know, we got to make that really, really clear. And again, I want to go as far as say innovate or die. It used to be 20, 25 years ago, the world was moving slow enough. You could be slow to the table with changes, and it might be 10 years it took or 15 years for your industry to change enough that you would become obsolete. Today, that can happen in 18 months. It can happen in 24 months. It can happen in 6 months. Depends on the industry. And even the industry that does not rely a lot on technology, although almost all of us rely on technology today, is going to change really, really rapidly in the coming years, and you're already starting to see it. So we live in this world that's changing at a pace like no human beings have seen before us. And if you want to think about it, if you look at some of the charts of where is technology going, in just 20 years from now, technological advancements will be hundreds of thousands to million times more advanced than today. That's hard for us to even think about, but that's the speed that things are operating at. A lot of people, I don't know if a lot of people, let me rephrase and say many people, we're starting to talk about Moore's Law being dead about a year ago. But more recently, there's been a lot of articles that have come out that says Moore's Law is not dead due to artificial intelligence, and actually technology is increasing at an even faster path than we thought it was. So just want to remind you, you've got to pay attention to this, because companies die when they get complacent and lazy, and it doesn't take a long time. So think about how can we last longer by fine-tuning our direction, understanding where we're going, looking at trends in the world, and trying to see what the future holds and get ahead of the curve in our industry. So another area that's related to innovation, but I would challenge you, another reason businesses don't scale that kind of fits under innovation number 7 is differentiation. So many times we talk to business and ask them, how are you different? And we'll hear things like, we have good customer service. I'm like, okay, but do you have great customer service, or do you have table stakes customer service to just be at the table to be in business? And most of us just have table stakes customer service. But you've got to find out how you're different in order to have some level of competitive advantage in this rapidly changing world. And I would challenge you, you really have 3 areas that you can look at. One is cost leadership. So look at a company like a Walmart, and that's a difficult one to have competitive advantage in, because you need a lot of processes and the ability to generate enough profit if you're going to be working on low price. Another is innovation, or looking at our industry and saying, where's the world going and how do we get ahead of it? And the third one, which I think is one that a lot of the more successful companies that you may be familiar with that are larger focus on, which is customer intimacy. So not customer satisfaction, but intimately knowing and understanding their customers. So if you think about companies like Southwest Air, Ritz-Carlton, this is not just customer service. This is an intimacy with their customer that goes much above and beyond the basic table stakes of the game. So as we kind of bring the 7 areas to close here, once you start to put these in place, I would also encourage you to create a culture of learning with your organization. So the culture of continuous learning was kind of birthed at organizations like Microsoft with Bill Gates and Michael Dell at Dell, where they would constantly be learning with their management teams, and that was a regular part of their culture. It could be learning, watching a TED Talk together. It could be learning something in your industry together. It could be talking about innovation. It could be a book that you share together and talk about, but build this culture of continuous learning, and it will certainly help you along the way here. So now what? How do you get started? Many of you may be thinking, well, I've done a lot of these things. I'm going to say, if you're not doing all 7, you've got work to do and places to improve, but some of you may not be doing any of them, and you really have sat here this morning and said, wow, I don't really have a business. I'm self-employed, and I really want to build a business that doesn't rely on me. So where do you get started? It's really relatively simple. Pick one of these areas and start working on it. So dismiss the self-employment myth is a great way to start. Let go and build a team to support you. How can you let go? And a lot of that is about having strategy. A lot of it's about having the right people. But it often starts with number 5, having those systems, processes, procedures in place. Once you have them, embrace a culture of accountability, and then create this culture of continuous learning and innovation. So again, here's some resources for you. I'll leave these up here as we kind of close things up. So Good to Great, great book. Certainly not a new book. If you're interested in critical conversations, there's a great book by Susan Scott, Fierce Conversations. If you're interested in checklists, great book, The Checklist Manifesto, that's written by a surgeon, that you can pull some great ideas. And of course, Scaling Up by Vern Harnish if you're interested in strategic planning. So again, I want to thank you for joining us today. And we appreciate your time this morning. Hopefully we gave you a little bit of something to think about, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Have a great March, have a great day, and we'll talk to you again soon. Tom ULBRICH out from the University at Buffalo Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership.